Chapter 2, Section 10 is entitled Equivalent Fractions and Decimals, and this is the homework helper for the workbook page. So take a look at questions 1 through 12. As you can see, all those questions are grouped together with the same directions. They're asking us to convert the fraction into a decimal, and we're supposed to round to the nearest thousandth if we need to. As you can see, I've got a reminder of the sum of the place values up at the top there in red. 1 place after the decimal is the tenths place, 2 after is the hundredths place, 3 after is the thousandths place, and 4 after the decimal is the 10,000ths place. We really probably won't need to go much further than that in any homework problems today. And number 1, we've got 2/10 there, and we're supposed to convert that. Now, a couple different options here. What you can do, if you want, is you can divide this out. Numerator divided by denominator. Now, most of you will probably do this with a calculator. But I don't have a calculator on me right here that's large enough for you to see. So we're going to do some long division here, which you will probably not like, but that's how we're going to do this. So I'm going to take 2 and divide it by 10. Well, 10 does not feed into 2. So already I'm out of luck, but we had a feeling this was going to go to a decimal because that's what the directions said. So remember what you do, in case you haven't seen this in a while, is you tag on a decimal and a 0, and you'll do that as many times as you need to. The decimal in terms of the quotient, which remember is the result of a division problem, just drags straight up. Now since 10 didn't go into 2, I'm now going to feed 10 into both of these numbers, which if I kind of ignore the decimal for a second, I'll even erase it for a second there if you need me to, is 20. Well, we know 10 goes into 20. That's easy. 10 goes into 20 2 times. 2 times 10 is 20. I subtract and I get 0. And that's excellent, because as long as I've covered everything and I don't have a remainder, when I zero out here, that means I'm done. So 2/10 is the equivalent of 0.2. which is what you're going to write on that blank there. Now, remember the shortcut method, the easy method, the do-it-like-school method, is to make this a fraction that's something over 100. And remember, the reason we use 100 is because it's like a paper or a test. If you get 72 out of 100 on a paper, you know right away 72%. All right, which would be 0.72 as a decimal. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to multiply this fraction by 10. And that's going to give me 20 over 100. And remember, when I'm saying I'm multiplying by 10 here, I'm multiplying the top and the bottom by 10. I didn't write times 10 because really times 10 just means to multiply the top by 10, and that's really not what I'm doing. I'm multiplying the whole fraction, top and bottom, numerator and denominator, by 10. So now that I've got this like a school paper, 20 out of 100, you would know that that would be a 20%. Ooh, that's not good. That's a bad F. Or 0.20. Now, of course, because this 0 is at the end of a decimal, you already know that you don't actually need it, so we can erase it. And so 2/10 is 0.2, just like we saw from our division over here. You can employ whatever technique, again, that's most advantageous to you, as I've told you many times before. Now in 13, we're going the other way. They're going to start you off with a decimal, and they want you to write that as a fraction. So that's where this knowledge of place value comes in real handy up here, because that's going to be how I'm going to figure out the denominator of my fraction. After I would take off any extra zeros, which you don't have here, you're going to figure out what place this last digit is in. And 5 is in the hundredths place. And that's going to be the denominator of my fraction I'm going to write as my answer, 100. The numerator, the top, is just this without the decimal. So if I throw the point out, it would just be 85. So it's 85 over 100. And I'm almost there now. Now all I have to do is reduce this guy. So simplest form, that's what they're implying, I'm going to chop 5 out of both the top and the bottom. And that's going to give me 17/20. Remember, 5 is the greatest common factor of the top and the bottom, if you want to get hyper technical, and that's why I'm chopping out 5. And so that's how I end up with 17/20, and that's the fraction for number 13 in simplest form. Okay, the bottom two questions, 25 and 26, are some story problems based on these same ideas. So let's take a look at number 25. In the 1998 Winter Olympics, a total of 205 medals were awarded. The U.S. won 13. What portion of the medals did the United States win? Well, they won 13 out of 205. That's easy. That's what it is as a fraction. But look at the directions. The directions say write each answer as a decimal rounded to the nearest thousandth. So now I've got to divide this, and I've got to go 3 places out at most. All right, so we'll do a little division here. This one isn't really going to be very friendly at all, but I'm going to do 13 divided by 205. And just like we saw in question 1, 205 doesn't go into 13, so I'm going to tag on a decimal and a 0 and treat this like 130. Well, 205 doesn't even go into 130. So even though I'm going to drag this decimal up for my quotient and put a 0 here to signify that division didn't work, I'm not done. All right, I'm going to tag on another 0, and hopefully this time I'll get somewhere. And indeed, 205 does go into 1300. I can make that work. That's going to go in 6 times. 6 times 205 is 1230. And this time now I'm going to subtract. Remember, I'm doing long division here. 1300 minus 1230 is 70. And since I didn't zero out, I'm going to tag on another 0 and bring it down and keep going. Remember, the way this works, like we showed here in number 1, is it has to zero out after that decimal. 205 into 700 is going to go 3 times. 3 times 205 is going to give me 615. And I'm going to subtract again, and that's going to give me 85. And I still didn't zero out, so I'm going to have to tag on another 0 and bring it down, which is 850. All right. Now, even though it said to go to the thousandths place, I need the next one so I can figure out how to round. Is it going to stay the same, or is it going to round up? So even though I'm going beyond what the book says, I have to, because that's how rounding would work. And again, most of you are probably doing this on a calculator, which is going to be much, much simpler. So 205 into 850, well, I can only get that to go in 4 times. We'll check it even though I don't really need it. It's 820. I subtract, it's 30, but I don't care because I've gotten to where I need. This next number is a 4. Well, you know the rules of rounding. It says if it's 5 or up, it goes up, and if it's less, it stays where it is. So this is going to be 0.063, or in other words, the U.S. won 0.063 of the medals awarded in the Olympics that year.